Hey guys, I'm here in Edwardsville, Illinois at the farm of Ed Niemeier. We're on the north side of town in Pin Oak Township, and this is going to be my first sample for Dr. Grufer's Soil Science Experiment Soil Health Buckets. So the whole gist of this program is to compare the differences between your field, the soil health of your field versus the land around it. So as you can see here, we're right along the interstate. That's I-55 right there, and this is a really grassy area, a few trees. So this will give us a great sample to compare with. This field over here, which is also happens to be the sweet corn patch this year, will be a great comparison. So some things that we should see when we're comparing these two samples: the grassy area should have some indications of higher soil health because it has continuous ground cover all year long. Even in the fall, winter, after the plants die, there should be a greater degree of soil health in this grassy wooded patch versus the cornfield behind me. So I'm going to take a sample from each area, and the whole gist of Dr. Grufer's program is to take two samples from two very different areas that are less than 50 feet apart. So you want to walk in about 5 or 6 rows into a cornfield, and you also want to, but you want to stay close enough in that grassy area to get something that'll be super comparable. Dr. Grufer's research shows that soil can change significantly with just a few feet of difference. So you want to make sure you have the same soil type and the same structure, which are things that we can determine in class. And if you don't, and you feel like you want to, we can send you back out to take more samples. So I'm going to get my supplies together and meet right back up with you. So now I'm here at my car prepping to take the soil samples. I've got 2 lunch baggies here. A brown or white paper lunch sack is great for taking soil samples. If you order soil bags from a soil lab, they might send you a waxed line paper bag. And that's just to maintain the paper bag's integrity when you're shipping a soil sample. This is perfect because it allows a little bit of moisture to escape. When we do a lot of our soil tests, we don't want damp soil. We actually want really dry soil. That'll give us the best results in our test, the most unbiased results in our test. So here, I'll come in a little bit closer. I did 2 baggies here. You can't put too much information on these bags when identifying the samples. That'll really help us in class talk about some of the different characteristics and also locate it on a soil map and in the plat book. Okay, so we are in Edwardsville, Illinois, Pin Oak Township. We're at the farm of Ed Niemeier, and I've got a bag here for field sample and for grassy sample, okay? It's important to take these notes ahead of time, and also I can also send you with a copy of the plat book map of where you're going if you even want to put like a land description, which is something else we'll talk about in class. Those are pretty important as well to farmers and also to bankers when making loans to farmers so that they know the quality, the size, and the shape of the farm. Okay, let's go get our samples now. Okay, so we're back in the grassy area here, and as you can see, I've got my soil sample bag handy. The first thing I'm going to do is open up that soil sample baggie. Now here in Edwardsville, Illinois, they got 5 inches of rain last night. So this is going to be a really mushy sample, and that just means I need to allow more time for the sample to dry out before I perform any of the tests in class. So here I'm going to get down here. I want to stay away from the compacted spots you see here. This is where the truck drives up and down throughout the year to get to the sweet corn patch or to get, when we're planting or harvesting or whatever. So I'm going to take a step in past the compacted area. It is pretty weedy, and if you're like me, susceptible to chafing on my legs from the different grasses and stuff that you see here. The tool I have, you don't really need anything fancy to take these soil samples. What I have here is just a basic garden trowel, and honestly I paid $1 for this at Dollar General, and we're going to keep it with the soil health bucket to assist you when you're taking your samples. So in the grassy area it's a little bit more challenging because you got to get down to some bare dirt. Another thing to keep in mind when you're taking these samples is to get as little plant material as possible in them. No big deal, we can always sift it out, but it's always better to start with less. That means less work for you in the long run. As you can see here in Pin Oak Township, we do have some darker soils. Appearance, first look, should have some excellent organic matter and structure to it, texture as well. And so we're just gonna take this. It'd be really nice if I had someone here to video for me while I'm doing this, but work with what you got, okay? I lost my clod. Oh, there it is. Okay. So you want about a cup, 1 to 2 cups of soil. It also won't hurt. In the past, I've done labs with Ag Science where we brought in, you really just need a half cup to do like the soil structure test and the ribbon test to get you ready for the soils contest. But with this, since we're going to be testing a lot of different other things, it won't hurt to have more than a half a cup. It's 1 to 2 cups. Okay, so this is our grassy sample, and of course I'm not going to do a great job at sifting out all of the plant material because it rains so much. But there you can see, let me set my trowel down here, and you can see that I've got about 2 cups of soil in there. Okay, so just fold up the top, roll it over. You don't want the moisture to escape at a super rapid rate. Really the best thing we can do is bring it to school, lay it out on a paper plate or a cookie sheet, and let it dry naturally without being at too high elevated levels. So now I'm going to grab my field sample. Go ahead and knock off some of the soil on the bucket or on the ground or something. That'll help you get a clean sample. We do want to eliminate any variables. You know, that's something that can be a huge ordeal in messing up different scientific experiments, is if there is too much overlay. So this is the end row here where we're standing. You can see that Ed probably pulled in here with his planter, and these were the first couple seeds that he planted at the beginning of the crop season. So I'm just gonna walk in to keep our consistency. I'm gonna take about 10 steps into the field. If you're looking at the ground here, you can see a little gravel from the road has gotten in. That's not a big deal. We'll just simply pick out the gravel and move on. Here's a nice clear space where I can set my bag down and simply, it's not near as wet inside the field. Oh, this is a good sign already. I can see plant roots left over from last year's crop. That's a good indicator of soil health. I haven't seen any bugs or earthworms yet. That's also another good sign of soil health, but I do see plant material, so that's promising. Ed likes to plant continuous corn in these fields along the interstate. You know, corn, a good corn crop looks nice, and he really likes that. So that is something to keep in mind when we work with these samples. Is what are the practices in the field? What have been the practices over the last 20 years? Yes, 20 years can have a major effect. All right, I'm gonna take you back to the truck, and we're gonna talk about what to do with these samples before you bring them into school. All right, back here at the truck, you can see Dr. Gruber has supplied us with a lot of different things to help us with our soil experiments. A lot of these are just basic things that you could get at Walmart. If you wanted to do your own soil science fair project or something along those lines, these are all things that you can borrow from me. You can check out from the ag department, or things that you can buy at Walmart. And really, to take the samples, it's really not that hard. You don't have to have fancy equipment. So you can kind of see here like a turkey baster. We'll get to that. We'll tell you what it's for. Some squirt bottles. And the thing we can do to break up some of the big clods, we've got a little handheld blender here that we can use. But if you're taking samples out in the field, what I may do is give you this bucket, because something that will help us in class is if you can sift out some of the excess plant material. That'll save us time in class when it comes time to doing our soil science experiments. And part of this kit are these 2 sorting screens. And these happen to fit perfectly over the bucket, just like this. And first of all, you'll go through the thicker screen that more plant material can get, or more particles can get through there, the larger soil particles. And then we have a finer one here like this. This will be the second one you use. And if you sift your samples before you bring them in, that will help me out tremendously and will help move on our soil science project. So these do fit right on top of the buckets, and they're super simple to use. You just shake them until all the smaller particles have gone through. Throw those back in the field. And then go through the smaller screen so that you get the smallest. What we want is individual particles of soil. We do not want soil PEDs. Soil PEDs can mess with our results, and we really don't. We really want unbiased results. Eventually, Dr. Gruber is going to start collecting data from the different FFA chapters that are participating in this program, and I want to be able to send him our data, and I want it to be as unbiased as possible. So this is the soil health bucket that I got at the workshop this year. It's got everything that we need to do all the soil experiments that we're going to do this semester. And I can't wait to see what samples you guys bring in and how that compares to the 2 or 3 samples that I'm going to collect this summer before we get started on our soil science unit. All right, that's all for now, and I look forward to seeing your samples. One from a grassy area and one from the field. Remember, keep in mind, these samples should be about 50 feet apart, no more. That will give us the most reliable results possible. Okay, folks, we're here. We're back in Butler Grove Township at the farm of Jack Grunquist, who also happens to be my grandpa. And we're gonna sample this field next. This field has been a rotation of corn and soybeans ever since I can remember, for at least 40, 50 years. The cool thing about this family farm, it's approaching its sesquicentennial anniversary, which means it's been in my family for over 200 years, almost 200 years. And we're really proud of that, and we really take a lot of pride in that. So my grandparents don't live here at the farm anymore. My uncle and my cousin take care of the day-to-day operations. But we were devastated by a tornado in the fall of 2018, early December actually. And those road graders that you see, that used to be a feedlot. We haven't had cows on the farm probably in 20 years, but we kept the feedlot barn for storage of random equipment, as you can see. So we're getting a little late in the summer here. This field looks pretty decent, but is a little rowdy around the edges. So I'm going to take my 2 samples. I'm going to go one, just like we did in Edwardsville. I'm going to go in 8 or 10 rows and take a sample, and then I'm going to come over here to this grassy patch that runs along the old feedlot and take my grass sample. So it'll be interesting to see what this sample does for us, if maybe any of the remains from the cattle feces has affected this patch of grass right here, which is a total possibility. So again, we're going to go in 10 rows here, take our sample, and we're going to take a sample here along the grassy patch. As you can see, I've got my trusty trowel, and I've got my 2 paper bags that are labeled. So on one, notice I've said on this bag, east of the house. When we're done with this sample over here, we're gonna walk over there to that field. I'll tell you more about that field in just a little bit. Okay, we're ready for round 2 here at the Runquist place. We're walking on over to this bean field here. This bean field has not always been here. This used to be the pasture for the horses and the sheep back in the day when my family was still involved heavily in the livestock industry. Unfortunately, that tornado I mentioned earlier took down an open front shed, kind of a loafing shed for sheep that was over here, and then also a stable, the old stable that was over here. Complete loss, completely knocked over. So about 3 or 4 years ago, this little bean field here was still in pasture and used it for a little bit of hay production. So we can see we've got some dark soil here. We do have a little bit of clay here in Montgomery County, enough to make tiling a big deal, a regular practice that most farmers use here. Not quite like the sandy bottoms you might find in Fayette County. But we're gonna take a field sample, and we're gonna take a grassy sample. Now, as you notice, we did get a little bit of rain, not quite the 9 inches that I mentioned in Edwardsville, or was it 5? Anyway, not quite the amount of rain, but I'm going to find a leaf here to wipe some of this excess mud off. Again, we want to have as unbiased results as possible, and if I continued using my trowel here, that's going to provide us a little bit of the soil that we found in the other field, and we want to keep try to use clean tools as much as possible. So this is the bean field at Evergreen Farms.